If you are hearing the word yes too much in business, you're probably doing something wrong. It sounds antithetical to what our typical objectives are: getting people to agree, getting people to comply, getting things to happen the way you would like. But if all you are hearing is yes, then something is wrong. In today's video, we want to walk through a concept that we've embraced in our firm that we call the ladder of no. I'm Arthur Petropoulos, managing partner, president here at Hillview Partners. We're a middle market investment banking firm, selling companies across the world, across all industries, primarily as missing puzzle pieces to very large strategic companies. So think of huge multi-billion-dollar companies that want to buy either particular access or particular capabilities. We are always representing on the sell side the companies that fill these gaps, not throwing spaghetti against the wall, but finding laser-pointed M&A type situations for our clients, and that's really been our sphere of expertise. And so why is that relevant to today's video, or what are we going to dig into? Think of it this way, right? In all business, we are trying to get to yes. And whether it's we're trying to get a new client, or whether it's we are trying to get someone to buy a business that we are representing, someone to see why the access or why the capabilities in our instances are worth buying instead of building. And what we've found in business and in general is that when you start hearing yes too much, it's a problem. And it's not a problem because the thing you have is not good. The thing you have may be very good, but it's a problem because it means you're not pushing far enough into the real value, right? Like into the highest echelon of value that could be attributed to the thing you have. Now, if you are selling a service to a company, then maybe you're not asking big enough companies, maybe you're not asking enough companies if they will pay you for something, right? If they will pay for your services. Maybe you're not asking for enough money for the things that you do. But the point being is you want to get to a point where you're hearing lots of no's. Now, I specifically say lots of no's, not entirely no's, because when you only hear no, the tricky part there is trying to decipher if what you're selling is actually getting no because it's bad, or getting no because someone doesn't like the price or what you're asking for. And so we always have this concept that we like to think about called kind of the edge of competency. And so how far can you push something, right? Either selling to bigger clients, either selling at a higher price, either looking for more money for, in our situation, companies were trying to sell better terms. Where is the edge where we're getting mostly no, but some traction? So there's at least some semblance that we are directionally moving something correctly, but we're getting enough no's to say, okay, we're really asking for enough here. Whether it's, again, for our services or in the vast majority of situations when we're selling a company and we're looking to sell it kind of what we say up the food chain. Right? If you have a good company that makes $10 million a year in profit, if you go to a bunch of middle market private equity firms, you're going to hear lots of yeses. And that's great. And you're going to think you're a genius and say, oh, I know exactly where to position these things. But what about if you go to a $1 billion private company? What if you go to a $10 billion public company? What if you go to a Fortune 500, $100 billion company? Right? At some level, every business, someone will say, it's too small, it's too quirky, it's too nichey. But if you can really highlight, again, in our situations, we say this access, this capability, here's why it fits, here's why it solves a missing puzzle piece. We are getting mostly no's in this arena, in this realm. But if you find the yes, right, that's where it's going to be tremendously valuable and where the outcome's usually going to be better, right? I think, we've always said in business, whether you're asking for business, again, more broadly, or whatever the situation might be, you need to be receiving mostly no's. But on top of that, you need to be playing a game where a yes is significant. And I think it was Jeff Bezos that said, make sure a home run is worth your while because there's not a lot of them that come around. Or, and I'm butchering the quote. Steve Schwartzman said a very similar thing where he said, big things and small things, they kind of take the same effort. So make sure your toil is worth it. Someone told me early in my career, if you want to do something hard, go start a restaurant in Chicago. But if you want to make, again, I'm sure there's plenty of people in Chicago who make a fortune running restaurants. But he said, look, if you're in it to make money, if the goal is to do that, then just keep pushing bigger, better, higher, more expensive until you kind of reach that resistance point. So it doesn't need to be hard in the sense of every single shekel you make is hard. But if it ever feels easy, you need to kind of push it to the point where it gets considerably harder. And so, again, in the context of selling businesses, we will ask for more money, ask for better terms, ask for a shorter transition for ownership. We will push the company and attempt to position it in front of much larger strategic businesses, publicly traded companies, companies where people would say, that's crazy to think they would want to buy that business of yours. Is it? I would rather get 100 no's and one yes, because if I get that yes, the terms for that particular suitor are going to be substantially better than the people that we would have found lots of yeses for. And I find that to be consistent kind of across all business. And so as I reflect in these musings, I think it's worth kind of finding the limit. So I think, what would be worse in life, right? Would it be so bad to lose big? Like, would it be so bad to like aim for some gargantuan goal and fall short? Anyone I've ever known that's gone for some like astronomical goal has typically, even if it doesn't get accomplished, they accomplish something else tremendous or really impressive that they would have only been able to accomplish if they were kind of knee deep in the muck, halfway through the jungle trying to find a vine to go through. Whereas, so take that as one instance of kind of losing big, but finding, inevitably large wins by virtue of waging a large war, if you will. Or conversely, like always winning, but being small. Everybody has I think, different objectives in life, different goals, different archetypes they're looking to compete with. But I think the one thing I would not want is I really would not want to have a situation where I just won and won and won. And then at the end of the day, like say you met God and he said, you worked really hard. You did a tremendous job at this stuff. You were so capable. I gave you these gifts. You utilized them. You did all this wonderful stuff. But had you just kind of pointed the sword at the bigger dragon, you could have done 100 times as much. Like I would at least like to, I guess, in life, reach the pinnacle of my own competency or incompetency. I don't know what the principle's called, but like I would like to rise to the level until I can definitively say I am too stupid to accomplish more than this, right? Or not capable enough. But I have to know what that limiting factor is. And so I kind of transmute that, if you will, into everything we do as a business, and everything I preach to everyone at Hillview Partners is like, whenever we're selling a company, we need to push it as hard and as far up the food chain as we possibly can, so we know who definitely, where that limiting factor is. And so we have a company we're selling now, and we've had some very large strategics and Fortune 500s, universally say they don't want to buy it. And that's fine. All of those no's are good. And we take it one level down to kind of the next level, next tier of strategics, and we're getting traction. But I want to be able to go back to a client and say, listen, this was the limiting factor. This is as far up the food chain as we could go. These are the terms that were best that we could get, because then you're not wondering what if, right? Like, what if you just sold to some random search fund guy who happened to email you on a Tuesday and told you he liked the same, crappy food from your neighborhood that because he said in ChatGPT, like, what does everybody in East Podunk eat on a Friday night, right? Like, that's all great and, wonderful stories, and it's going to make some pretty cool LinkedIn posts for someone. But no, you want the best you can possibly get for your business. If you've slaved away for, a half a century trying to grow it, like, let's see who would do it, right? And if that ultimately is the best buyer, then c'est la vie. But you don't owe favors to people to be mediocre in the results. Just the same way in business. Like, we don't have to stay small. No one has to stay small. No one has to not do something amazing. And so the goal is and we're doing it with our own company. We've been in business now a decade, and we continue to push to say, how big of a company could we sell? How big of a company could we sell it to? How big of a transaction could we get into, right? Like, what is the difference between someone playing in the NBA and like some scrub off the street, like if they put him in the game and he scores 30 points in a game, I look at, what was it, Jeremy Lin 15 years ago, whatever. The guy was a rock star. Obviously certainly did not keep it up, but had he done it, right, he just would have been a hero. Like, you don't need to make magic happen that many times before you're a magician. So push it to whatever that limit is. That's the ladder of no, right? Like, okay, I'm getting lots of yeses. I'm getting only yeses. Well, it's time to do something bigger and better. Push it to someone, again, selling a business, put it to someone higher up the food chain. All right, I'm getting mostly yeses. I'm getting some yeses. I'm getting all no's. Okay, go back down, get better, and then go back up another step. But that's the idea. And so if there's any thought to convey in this particular video, it's the ladder of no. And I think this goes back to another Jeff Bezos misquote that I'm going to utilize is, what would you rather be, when you're 80 years old? What would the regret be? Would the regret be to say, like, you know what, I just wish the whole world knew just how mediocre I could be. I was the most mediocre. I could be so wildly mediocre. Or is it, I took the biggest hack at something I possibly could. I stepped into the batter's box against, Roger Clemens or Randy Johnson or whoever, other people, Greg Maddux, Tom Glavine, thinking of everyone if you were a 90s kid. But I'd rather do that. I don't know. I don't think maybe not everybody's the same, but I can at least say for our business and for the clients we represent, like, we're going to push, and I don't care if we ever look embarrassed because we tried to get something too big of a platform or tried to get something too big of an audience, but we will push until we reach that limit. Call us morons, say we've reached the point of our incompetence, say we're clearly outclassed, but fine, because, there's a Buster Douglas, every so often, and it happens in every business, and ours is no different. And you're not going to be just kind of throwing Hail Marys and praying that things work. Like, you're going to find where the meat of things work, but as you become more competent, or as the businesses we sell continue to improve, if we're working with them for a longer period of time, like, you will clearly elevate. And it's just important not to put a limiting factor on things just because it's comfortable, right? And we could work with certain companies all day that people could say, Arthur, you're a genius. I think you're the smartest man in the world. No one could possibly solve these problems forever. Or we could make 10 times as much money, and some of the buyers are going to say, I can't believe you're even wasting our time with this stuff. Hey, c'est la vie. You know what? Like, we'll find something beautiful for you to look at tomorrow. You'll be all right. But that's the idea. So the ladder of no's. We push deals until we reach a limiting factor. We'll push our business until we reach a limiting factor. And if there's anything that I've at least felt in a decade of business that provides some level of fulfillment in business, it's seeing just how big of a crack you can take at something. More than, sports cars and watches and trips to the Hamptons. I will say, taking a big crack at something will provide most fulfillment. So today's video is part deals, part M&A, part philosophies of a banker. But that's a thought for today. The ladder of no, kind of pushing until you are constantly on the edge of, called the edge of competence, the edge of capabilities. And that's what we think derives the best results. So that's a thought for this time. Hope the week, hope the month are going well for everyone. Keep pushing forward. God bless. And we'll see everyone next time.